Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the debut episode of the 411 pod. And today I have a very special guest, the GOAT. 10 times All Star, 11 times MVP, future Hall of Famer, the greatest. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Ankita in the house. Ankita, how we feeling? How we feeling?
Feeling great. I'm getting to yap with my best friend after a long time. This is
Okay.
amazing.
All right. Let's go. You know, the topic of today, and we'll get to that later. Well, when I thought about the topic, it's something I've been thinking about for the last 2 years. I've been trying to write an article about it, but I just never got around it. And I was thinking, the idea of the podcast came around, and who is the best person to talk about this with? That list was very short, and you were on top of that list. And we'll get to
I'm
why I chose you in
honored.
the
I'm
first place.
honored. Thank you.
But when I was also thinking about how we should start, right? Then I realized I don't even remember how we met. Do you remember?
Yes, of course, I remember. I remember, honestly, like it was yesterday because it wasn't that long ago. But I remember we met through Simon through the MBA program. And I remembered you joined a little bit later. And a few of us decided one day we'd just go to the cafeteria because we had a long gap between some of our classes. So it was you, me, and two other people who went. And I remember one of the first things I said to you was, "Oh, I lived in Nigeria when I was younger." And I told you
Yeah.
that I grew up when I first started speaking English, I actually started speaking Pidgin. And of course, that changed with time. But I remember telling you that I would say "oh" at the end of each sentence. And I remember you being shocked, like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know anyone who's not Nigerian who's been to Nigeria." Maybe you do, I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much how we met, and it just went from there.
Interesting. I like that you said that because I don't remember, but that sounds like me, in my reactions to things in general. So another interesting question is when you met me, like, what was your first impression of me?
You know what? I feel like my impression of you is very different from how you actually were. Because you know how earlier I said we met through the MBA and you joined a little bit later? I think because you started a little bit later than the rest of us, initially you'd sit a little bit away from everyone. So I got the impression you were very reserved, very quiet, not very outgoing. But then, of course, I was quickly proven wrong in 2, 3 weeks as we started going to events with our classmates. And I would see you literally be like, "my guy, my man," to everyone, like literally any and everyone. And I was like, okay, yeah, I was wrong. I was wrong. And also, you got the award most likely to brighten up anyone's day because it's true with your personality and your
I was trying to
vibes and
keep that
everything.
under wraps. I was trying to keep that under wraps, man. I
It's
mean, I
true.
guess it was just a new environment. It was my first time leaving Nigeria,
Yeah.
obviously. So it was my first time like seeing people from other places.
Yeah.
And
Fair.
some other challenges I was facing at the time, but it's all good. It's all good. Time has passed and we've all gotten to know ourselves better.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could describe our friendship, how would you describe it? With one word,
Unserious. Unserious.
Oh,
Because we're
hey,
always
come on,
laughing.
come on. You know what? I'll go back to this video and check how many seconds you've laughed versus me. You are the one that's always laughing. I guess it's nice. It's nice. And I remember when I was talking about, you know what, before we go ahead, my first impression of you, or let me say my first impression was like, this lady is so organized. Like, and I wonder where that comes from. Because like your notes in school were always color coded, you're always listening in class, you're always doing your assignments very early and punctual. Like, where does that
Yeah.
come from?
Honestly, it comes from my mom. When I was much, much younger, I was very disorganized actually. And I would never do my
Interesting.
homework. And I'm talking super young. I'm talking at the age of 5, 6. Like I would not remember that I had homework and do my homework. So my mom actually used to sit down with me and make sure that I finished my homework. And she would also, if she didn't like the way I wrote something or organized something, she would make me redo it. Like she would literally say, "No, this is not going to work. Your teacher is not going to be able to read this, or this looks bad. It's disrespectful." So, yeah, she kind of inspired me to do better from a young age.
It's your emotion.
Yes.
That's
Shout
quite
out my mom.
interesting. And when you're talking at the start, you said that you've lived in Nigeria. That was one of
Mhm.
our first connection points.
Mhm.
Obviously, we have other things in common, I'd say. Of course, we went
Mhm.
to Simon together, and
Yeah.
we kind of shared like the same group of friends, obviously, so which was nice. But then, what I really want to go into is because I'm fortunate to be your friend. I know you've lived in Nigeria, but you've also lived in 7 other countries. What country do you think shaped you the most?
Ooh, that is a very tough question. Honestly, I have to say maybe the United States has shaped me the most. And that's because I started my adulthood here and I started it by myself. In all the other countries I lived in, I had my parents with me. And in the United States, of course, I still had my sister with me, but I feel like a lot of the experiences I had were by myself. I learned to be less reserved. I learned how to do things by myself and become more independent, of course, without that familial support with me that was there constantly. I feel like I became more aware about who I was as a person, and I'm still learning, by the way, but yeah, I just feel like it's shaped me into who I am today. I've been here 10 years. It's crazy to think that 15 was the first time I stepped foot in the US. So it's been a ride. It's been a trip.
That's interesting. That's interesting to say. I would also agree that, the adults who your teenage years probably like shape you the most, right? Especially
Mhm.
undergrad and all that, which is
Yeah.
probably the same for me, even though I was in Nigeria the whole time. Most of my friends today are from college days, right? Which kind of makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
But from your journey so far, wh- what's the funniest, or let me say the strangest culture you've experienced?
Strangest culture. Hmm. That's also an interesting one. Well, I don't think I wouldn't say any culture is strange per se. I find all cultures interesting, but I can tell you about some culture shock experiences I had.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I love that.
So in when I first moved to the United States, the first city I was in was New York City. And the biggest culture shock I had was just how open people are. Like, I literally met someone, and within 5 minutes, they were telling me about their traumas, how their relationships were with their parents, which, let me tell you, from the way that person was describing it, they were not good relationships. They were like spilling all of their secrets, and I was like, wow, I literally don't even know you, and you're telling me everything about yourself, which is crazy. I found it
Yeah.
very shocking that people would openly swear on the road. Like people are yelling on the phone and they're swearing, they're cussing. And at first I was scared because I had never experienced that before. And I moved from Singapore, which is a completely 180 different culture. People are more reserved there, more private. So it was just very scary. And of course, the portion sizes, don't even get me started on the portion sizes.
What do
American
you mean?
portion so in America, there's a stereotype that the food portions are huge. And I was always like, okay, I don't really believe it. But then when I moved here, I was like, you know what? It's right. Because now when I go back to visit my parents who are in Dubai, a hamburger in America will be this big. And sometimes you can't even bite into it. But in Dubai, it'll be like, manageable, much smaller. So you can bite into it, no problem.
Funny you said that because I feel like I did not think it was different compared to Nigeria, especially
Really?
because we are so carbs heavy in our meals.
Mm. Mhm.
And so the carbs, like for instance, if I'm eating jollof rice, right? It's usually a very big plate of jollof rice. And
Mhm.
then you just sprinkle maybe some eggs or one or two pieces of meat, and that's it. So I found it's very similar in terms of portion
Mm.
sizes. I mean, maybe because we just eat a lot. I don't know.
But you know what? Jollof rice is so good. even if I wasn't exposed to American portions, I feel like I would take an American jumbo sized portion of jollof rice. By the way, chat, just want to let you know, chat, Khalil makes some really good jollof rice, some of the best I've had in my life.
I
So shout out
promise we didn't
Khalil.
pay for this PR, but Nigerian jollof on top, Nigerian jollof, always, always, always. But it is interesting. You've mentioned New York City, you've mentioned Singapore, you've mentioned Nigeria. But whenever someone asks you, Ankita, where are you from? What's typically your answer these days?
Well, the first thing I say is, ugh. And then the next thing I say is, that's a hard question. But honestly, I just say, because I find it easier personally and I get less questions. So I just say India because I have an Indian passport. But in my heart, I truly don't feel like I'm fully from India because, yes, I do have the passport. I do have that aspect of my culture. But whenever I go back to India, people always treat me like I'm a foreigner. Like people will speak to me in English. If I try speaking in Hindi, they'll like not understand what I'm saying because apparently I have an accent when I speak Hindi. And I just never felt like I can fully relate to the people there. And it's the same in every other country that I've lived in. I've become immersed in the culture, but still there's like a part of me that doesn't feel like it's fully where I'm from. So it's tough for me to answer that from my heart. I think each culture, of course, has been ingrained in me and shaped me, but I don't know. How about you, Khalil? Now that you've been in the US for 3 years, would you still say you're from Nigeria or do you feel a shift for yourself?
Of course, I'm from Nigeria. You know, I lived almost my whole life in Nigeria. I never traveled anywhere, even like even to any other West African country. So, of course, Nigeria is the only thing I've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
However, even in my Nigerian context, like my parents are from a different place. I grew up in a totally different place. And then I moved for work after college
Mm,
to Lagos, right? So I feel like I probably relate the most to Lagos because that's where I lived life without
yeah.
the supervision of my parents. That
Mm-hmm.
was when I started earning money. I remember my first salary, I was so excited because I could buy shawarma and
Money.
without feeling. I remember I got my first check. Then that night I went to buy shawarma. I was so excited that I could buy it without feeling like, oh, I have to manage my money.
Yeah.
But and I have so many good memories of Lagos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when
Of
I came
course.
here, when someone asks me, "Oh, where are you from?" or if I'm introducing myself, I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Lagos, Nigeria," right? But am I really from Lagos? I only lived there for 6 years. Can I really say I'm from where my parents are from? I have some connection there. I've spent a lot of summers there, but at the same time, I don't really live it. I don't have the accent from that town, you know. And then where I grew up is
Mm-hmm.
also the same, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't really have the accent from that town. I don't have the charisma people from Ibadan have. So these days, it depends on
I
who's
don't
asking.
know. I don't know, Khalil. You have a lot of charisma, if you ask me. Our
Well,
friends all call him the Master Rizzler because of his charisma.
now you're exposing my darkest secret, man. But it depends on, just to answer your question, it depends on who's asking.
Yeah.
Since I've moved down south, whenever someone asks me, "Oh, so where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm from upstate New York."
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, "Oh man, it must have been so cold," or blah 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 blah. Or they ask, "Interesting, but where are you actually from?" I'm like,
Mm.
"Actually, I'm from Nigeria." So these days is changing.
Yeah.
The answer keeps changing, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's how we are as humans, right?
Yeah,
And
of
I also
course.
feel like this question is also not something that is just happening. Migration has been happening for God knows when. When I was doing some small research, I realized at some points Latin was one of the most spoken languages. But
Wow.
now, because of migration, right? Because people moved around either for trade, either for love, either for something else, right? Things have changed over time. And at the same time, Latin still exists because of, Latin has other children, right? We have Spanish, we have Italian, we have other languages that are from that Latin
Yep.
umbrella, right? So I feel like things have always been the same in the sense that people move, identities sometimes change,
Mhm.
identities some identities are lost, some are found. However, I think that because of the internet now, things are rapidly changing and they're changing
Yep.
fast.
Yep.
Yeah, like I don't have to leave Nigeria for me to really know how New York City is like through movies, through hip hop, through music and all that, right?
Reels,
So
content, TikToks, all of
my
that
goodness,
stuff.
yeah,
A day in
my
my
goodness.
life. All those
Exactly,
vlogs.
exactly. So you can easily see, oh, this is so this is how New York City is, right? This is Times
Mhm.
Square, which by
Mhm.
the way was amazing the first time I saw it.
Mhm.
I don't know
Can be
which is it.
overwhelming.
Huh? Yeah, I mean it was overwhelming, but it was nice. So I remember my first time in the country. I arrived at JFK. It was really in the night, so I couldn't see. It was during the night, like 3 a.m. I couldn't see anything. Then I was going to Rochester, which is where we did business school.
Mhm.
And I was trying to cross the road. I remember it was my brother and I. But you know this signs for pedestrian where it changes when you have to cross
Yeah.
and when you have to stop, right? I wasn't used to that. So even though the sign was like red, I was like, yeah, let me just cross the road. And my brother held me back, like, Oga, calm down, right? So, and because I was in a hurry, I was going to Penn Station to get the train to Rochester. So
Mhm.
I could not really like immerse myself in the surrounding, right? Then a couple of weeks fly by. I come back to the city for a conference. It was one of our other classmates and I. We toured the city for like 4 or 5 hours. So that was like the
Yeah.
first time I really like looked at New York City. Like
Yeah.
I went to Times Square, you know, I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, things that you've been seeing since your childhood in movies, right? And
Mhm.
I
And
could
it's
not believe
real.
I was in the city. Like with these tall buildings, everyone is hustling, bustling.
Mhm.
I always have the same experience whenever I go back. It always feels
Yeah.
like I have to make it. There's
Yeah.
this something the city gives you. I don't know about
Yeah.
you. What's your favorite place to live in, by the way? I never asked.
Favorite place to live? Okay, that's also another hard question because for me, it's not so much about the place, it's about the people. And, I think this kind of relates to the conversation we were having earlier about how, we feel for us, where we say we're from is where both of us have that experience of where we gain independence. They have this saying that home is where the heart is. So for me, I think I've liked every place because I've had my parents, my sister, I've made really good friends. Rochester, honestly, some people might say it's a bit of a small town. There's not too much happening there, but I really liked living there because I had you and all of our other MBA friends. Like it just made the whole experience so much better. So yeah, I'm sorry to be boring, but I don't have a favorite. For me, it's like the people who are there are my favorite.
Or how would you say, because you lived in the city for a while, right? Probably three,
Yes,
5 years,
yeah.
7 years, right? So how
Actually,
was it
8.
adjusting to Rochester?
It was hard at first. It was hard because at New York City, you can literally walk a few blocks and you come across some grocery stores or places where you can get basic provisions. I was spoiled because in Rochester, at least across the road from where I lived in Gola, there was that CVS. And then towards the end of our time there, that other Asian grocery store opened up. But I feel like if we wanted to get like actual vegetables, fruits, all of that stuff, we'd have to go to Walmart. So either we'd have to take the bus there and ride in the bus for like 40 minutes or so, like 40 minutes both ways, or we'd have to Instacart it or just find someone who's willing to drive us there. So I guess I missed that convenience in Rochester. Definitely way colder in Rochester. Don't even get me started on the cold. Like the wind chill is completely out of this world, which I'm sure for you must have been tougher to manage because you were coming from Nigeria.
My first winter, oh my goodness, when it started snowing heavily, Like I almost cried one night when I was coming back from campus. Like it was so cold. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
why do I have to be here? And it gets much worse, especially when you go on Instagram and then you see your friends chilling, having a good time in Nigeria,
At the
especially
beach.
during December. Yeah, at the beach, going out. And I'm like, man, why did I have to be here? But I'm gonna say this though. It was much better with having the likes of you around, right? Just to while away time. So I'd say, you held it down, for real, for real.
Thank you.
Well, moving away from geographies a little bit, right? We've
Yeah.
talked about how you've lived in different countries, but you also sort of moved your discipline over time, or let me say your career. So you started out as a psychology major, and then you moved into recruiting. And now I know that you are doing something around brand slash marketing.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the biggest lesson you've experienced over those career pivots?
Um, for me, I guess it's like everything kind of led to the other, if that makes sense. Because I'll be honest, I had no clue what I wanted to do at the age of 18. I picked psychology because I've always been that one friend who everyone comes to with their problems. So I felt, you know what, I could become a therapist. I could do this for a living. But then when I went into that school, NYU, where I did my undergrad and I went through the coursework, I realized that it's a very, very lengthy process to become a therapist. You have to go through years of school and then you need to go through years of training before you can become a licensed therapist. So I was like, yeah, no, I can't. My wallet can't take that much school. So I decided to pivot. I thought I'd go into the HR world, but HR has many branches and recruiting is one of them. So, recruiting actually involves many elements of psychology because you are, at least in the work that I was doing as an external recruiter, where I was working with people who are looking to hire people and people who are looking for jobs. So a lot of it involves finding the right connection, the right fit between different personalities. So that really helped. But because I was working for a startup, the role involved a lot of marketing efforts as well. So I was doing a lot of email campaigns and I was doing a lot of like branding for the company. And then I realized, you know what? I actually enjoy these marketing efforts a lot, and that's what led into marketing. So I think that's pretty much what I learned. Like everything kind of flows into the other. Does
You
that
know
make
what? I
sense?
agree with that answer because I guess that's the same for me. And it's not even from only a career perspective. I just feel like every experience you live, it's never wasted.
Mm-hmm.
I still use some knowledge from my undergrad. I still use some knowledge from my first job, my second job, even up to now, right? As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, I still even use some of your cooking skills whenever I'm cooking, right?
Hey.
So almost every experience you live is never wasted. It almost ties into the next one and the next one, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I always tell people that, even when you're engaging in endeavors you are not passionate about, you should still always put your best in
Mm-hmm.
because you never know what that will give you or, that
Yes.
springboard that will give you into your
Absolutely.
next job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wise words from Mr. Woli. Wise Woli.
Come on, you know the vibes. But now I know you are in branding, you work with toys now. And I know there has to be some creativity that goes into it, that goes into making it, that goes into marketing it.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say you've learned the most, or how has that changed the way you look at creativity, working in the toy industry?
Wow, now we're getting into like the MBA level, like interview questions with the star stories and everything.
And that it's supposed to be a chilled answer. It's supposed to be a chilled
Well,
answer.
so I think creativity can come from cross-functional collaboration, if I'm being quite honest. Because in my role, so I'm involved in both brand and product marketing. I come up with the brand strategy, which then informs the product strategy for what types of toys we want to do. But of course, I just come up with the strategies and I manage to make sure that we're meeting targets. I'm working with a much broader team of designers, of engineers, of commercial team, finance team, sales team, on and on and on and on and on. So I think in order to make an item the best it can possibly be and the most innovative, I think it's very important to have that cross-functional collaboration, to understand what all possible capabilities can be. And I think that's how you can be your most creative, because you're all brainstorming together, and that's what leads to the finalized product. So yeah, that's what I've learned about being creative. Like, it's okay to, pivot, bounce ideas off of other people and work together to achieve the most, what you feel is the most creative.
And I feel like the MBA prepared us for that in a sense because you have to do assignments. I mean,
Mm.
I remember we used to bounce ideas off each other, especially on assignments, but it was more of you
Mhm.
bouncing off the idea and me just receiving. But I feel like the MBA prepared us on how to work in a team,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
I think
which
that
is good.
definitely helped a lot. And like listening to others and what others have to say, especially if you don't always necessarily agree with them, because that does tend to happen. So it's good to just listen and keep an open mind. Be open-minded.
Well, enough about the serious stuff about career, about MBA. One question I wanted to ask, we've talked about you've lived in different countries, you've changed your careers over time. What would you say, number one, makes a place a home? You've mentioned, the people, but what other things do you typically enjoy that makes a place feel like home to you? Is it the food? Is it the nature? Is it something else?
I think so. I've been thinking about that a lot here in Buffalo, where I currently live. And I think, other than, of course, having good people around you, it's just those small little everyday experiences which you end up enjoying. So for me, it's going to the grocery store, once a week to get my provisions. I think knowing that I have a go-to place makes it feel like home. You find restaurants and, other places, museums that you really enjoy going to. And like, if you end up becoming a regular there, I feel that again is what makes it feel like home, because you have your favorite aspects of that place. And I think for us in Rochester, I'm going to be very honest, for me, going to that Starbucks on campus kind of made me feel like that was home, because I was there literally at least twice a week, if not more.
Well, shout out to Starbucks. They always come in
Yeah.
clutch. Yeah. In my second year, I remember that I had this job, right? That I could
Hmm.
spend a couple of dollars on Starbucks and whatnot. So I was there a lot of times. So shout out to
Yes, and
Starbucks.
many of those times were because we may or may not have forced Khalil to treat us.
I don't know, they call me Father Christmas sometimes. Anyway, one last question, and see, you must have an answer for this. You can't
Hmm.
say, oh, yes, or maybe or something. If you could live in one country forever, what would that country be? Or okay, you know what? If it's the US, it has to be a city.
Okay.
But if it's outside the US, what country would you love to live forever?
It's definitely in the US, and I'm going to be so basic. It's going to be New York City, because
Yeah.
it's just, I think, out of everywhere, so out of all the cities I've lived in New York City the longest, about 8 years. Or no, it's 7 years, sorry, not 8. And yeah, it's got a little bit of everything. I feel like it's got a bit of every single culture. You can find good Nigerian food there, you can find good Indian food, Chinese, and the list just goes on and on. So you definitely have a lot of food to try, but then you also find, the routine places that you go to every so often. So I have a list of my go-to coffee shops. I don't drink coffee, but from matcha, which I go to there. And I feel like there's just, there's your staples, but there's always something new happening there. So you just never get bored. And like you said, people are always hustling. It kind of, to me, that motivates me. It makes me want to work hard so I can afford to live in the city.
You
But
see, you
yeah,
can afford the good things of life, man.
what about you?
Well, for me, where would I love to live forever? It will likely be my wife's heart, but
See, Master Rizzler. I said Master Rizzler for a reason. And all of us.
But that's a good question. I haven't thought about it. I'd say I'd love to live in like two places.
Yeah.
You know, I love where I live now. I love the South because of the weather. It's wonderful, almost wonderful all year round. But the summers are very tough. They get very hot, very humid. So I'd say for the summers, right? I'd love to live here. I'd love to live in a place like Chicago-ish. I don't even know why I love. I mean, Chicago just sounds fun, right?
Yeah.
Or you know, just some place that is nice, that is giving city-like.
Yeah.
Because you just don't want to lose that drive, that motivation that got you to where you are today, right?
Yeah.
So the plan is to be rich so that I can afford two houses.
We have to hustle.
But you're already part of the 411 pod story because you're our first guest. You know, I want to say thank you for honoring the podcast.
Of
You know,
course.
you're already part of
Thank you
our
for having me.
history. Yeah, yep, yep. I feel like this is gonna go bonkers, man. But just to round it all up, what question do you want to ask me that you've always wanted to ask?
How do you get your skin looking so good?
Well, to be honest, it's by the grace of God. Nah, I mean, I feel like my skin has gotten better, even for like jokes apart, right? I feel like my skin has gotten better because you always tell me to use sunscreen. And
Yes.
I've been using it. I've been using it. I've been moisturizing better. I've been using some sort of cleanser ish every night.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you did not mean for me to answer that question, but I still answered because I believe my skin is genuinely looking better.
No,
But
I agree.
anyway,
That's why I asked. And
for
chat
real.
and viewers, anyone who's watching this is your sign. If you want nice, healthy looking, glowing skin like Khalil, use sunscreen, use cleanser, use it all.
And with that, we wrap up the first episode of the 411 pod. And thank you, Ankita. And it's
Thank you,
bye
Khalil.
for now.
Bye.